Caitlin woke with her heart racing, sensing something was terribly wrong. It was the eve of her sister Emma's wedding, and the house was abuzz with preparations. But as she rushed to the mirror, shock paralyzed her. Her hair, which had fallen in perfect waves to her waist, was now a ragged mess cut harshly and unevenly. Her hands trembled as she touched the destroyed strands. Tears burned her eyes, but anger followed, hot and pulsing. The night before, her mother, with an icy glare, had held the scissors and said, "You can't show up at the wedding like that. Emma is the star." The sentence echoed like an ancient betrayal, but amplified. Caitlin had always known that Emma was the favorite child, the smart one, while she was reduced to pretty, a label her family used to diminish her. The cut wasn't just her hair, it was an attack on her identity, on her confidence. She fell to her knees, feeling the weight of years of disdain, but deep inside a spark ignited. "They think they broke me," he thought, clenching his fists, "but I'll prove them wrong." What would you do if your own family stabbed you in the back? Caitlin wiped away her tears, and the seed of a plan began to grow. The house buzzed with preparations for Emma's big day, but for Caitlin, the air was heavy, thick with betrayal. The mirror reflected not only her ruined hair, but the face of a woman who had spent her life fighting her family's expectations. Her mother showed no remorse. On the contrary, she seemed satisfied, as if she had fulfilled a duty. "You always wanted attention, Caitlin. This is for everyone's good," she said, her tone a mix of authority and disdain. Caitlin tried to respond, but her voice faltered. Humiliation burned, and every glance in the mirror was a reminder of what they had done. She locked herself in her room, avoiding the curious glances of the arriving relatives. But as she listened to the laughter downstairs, something shifted inside her. Pain gave way to cold determination. "They thought this would shut me up," she murmured, reaching for a notebook where she jotted down ideas. Caitlin knew the wedding would be the perfect stage for her response. What her family didn't expect was that she was about to turn the tables. Have you ever felt the rage of being betrayed by the very person who was supposed to protect you? The story was just beginning. The clock ticked down to the final hours before the wedding, and Caitlin still felt the weight of what had happened. The haircut wasn't just a cruel act. It was an attempt to erase her, to ensure she didn't have a chance to shine alongside Emma. Her mother always said Caitlin thought too highly of herself because of her appearance, but never acknowledged her achievements. Her honors degree, her promising career. All of this was overshadowed by Emma's blatant favoritism. As she stared in the mirror trying to fix her mangled hair, Caitlin remembered all the times she'd been belittled. Each snip echoed the cruel words she'd heard her entire life. "You're not that special." But now, the pain was turning into fuel. She reached for her cell phone hidden deep in her purse. Her mother tried to confiscate it, but Caitlin was quicker. "They don't know who they're dealing with," she thought, as she typed a message to Mark, the groom's brother, who had always been a discreet ally. "What would you do if you were betrayed like this?" Caitlin knew it was time to plan revenge. As the house filled with guests, Caitlin felt her isolation growing. Her family acted as if nothing had happened, laughing and toasting to Emma's future. But every laugh was a reminder of the betrayal. The haircut was more than a physical change. It was an attempt to erase her confidence, her essence. Caitlin spent the morning trying to hide the damage with scarves and makeup, but nothing could disguise the humiliation. Her mother, upon seeing her, simply said, "Don't make a fuss, Caitlin. It's your sister's day." The coldness of the sentence cut like a knife. But as the others prepared to celebrate, Caitlin felt a new strength growing. She would no longer be her family's victim. Deep in her heart, she knew the wedding would be more than Emma's day. It would be the day she would take the reins. "They underestimated me for the last time," she thought, mentally mapping out her plan. The betrayal had hurt her, but it had also awakened her. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you loved? Caitlin was ready to make her family pay dearly. The morning of the wedding dawned with Caitlin still processing the shock. Her hair, which she had cared for so lovingly, was now a cruel reminder of what her mother had done. As she got ready, she heard her relatives whisper, "What happened to her? It looks like she cut her own hair." The lie was already beginning to spread, planted by the family to deflect blame. Caitlin felt anger bubbling, but held back the tears. She knew crying would only give them what they wanted, to see her defeated. Instead, she looked in the mirror and made a promise. "Today they will learn not to mess with me." Emma's wedding would be the perfect stage to expose the truth. Caitlin grabbed her phone and exchanged quick messages with Mark, who promised to help her. "You deserve this, Caitlin," he wrote. "We will show them for who they really are." The family's betrayal was the beginning, but what came next would be unforgettable. Have you ever felt the weight of an injustice that seemed to have no end? Caitlin was ready to turn the tables. Caitlin grew up being told she'd never be as good as Emma. As a child, the comparisons were subtle but cruel. When Caitlin brought in her first report card with excellent grades, her mother simply shrugged. Emma got that last year, and she still plays sports. Her father, always distant, would reinforce, "Don't worry, Caitlin, you're pretty, that's enough." These words, repeated over the years, dug a deep hole in her self-esteem. She worked extra hard, studying late, graduating with honors, landing a top job at a marketing firm, but nothing seemed enough. Emma, on the other hand, was celebrated for any achievement, no matter how small. Caitlin remembered a family dinner where she announced a promotion at work, only to hear her mother change the subject to talk about Emma's new major. The pain of being invisible in her own home was unbearable. Now, with her hair cut off on the eve of her wedding, Caitlin saw clearly her family would never value her. Enough trying to please them, she thought, clutching a tissue to cover the damage. Have you ever felt like nothing you do is enough for the one who's supposed to love you? Caitlin was ready to change the game. The toxic family dynamic wasn't just a matter of preferences, it was a deliberate campaign to keep Caitlin in her place. Emma, with her manipulative charm, knew how to fuel this narrative. When Caitlin shone, like at her graduation party, where everyone praised her beauty and intelligence, Emma reacted coldly, making sarcastic comments that her parents echoed. "Don't get carried away, Caitlin. You know Emma's the one who's going far," her father would say, laughing as if it were a joke. But for Caitlin, there was no humor, only pain. She tried for years to earn their respect. She worked harder, smiled more, swallowed the criticism. But every effort was met with indifference or disdain. The haircut was just the culmination of a lifetime of belittling. Sitting in her room, Caitlin flipped through an album of old photos, seeing moments when she tried to fit in. "They never really saw me," she muttered, slamming the album shut. Anger grew, but with it came clarity. She no longer needed their approval. Have you ever felt trapped in a cycle of devaluation? Caitlin decided it was time to break that cycle. The house had always been a battlefield disguised as a home. Caitlin remembered the little things. How Emma received better Christmas presents, how her parents cancelled Caitlin's plans to prioritize Emma's, how her achievements were treated as luck. Once, at 16, Caitlin won a statewide essay contest. Excited, she showed her parents the trophy, but her mother simply said, "That's great, honey, but don't let it go to your head. Emma is preparing for the math Olympiad." Her father didn't even glance at the trophy. Those memories came flooding back now as Caitlin tried to fix her ruined hair. Each snip felt like an echo of those rejections. Emma, with her calculating ways, always knew how to exploit this dynamic, ensuring Caitlin stayed in the background. But what the family didn't know was that Caitlin was tired of being the other daughter. She grabbed her phone and sent another message to Mark. They'll regret it. The hair betrayal was the trigger, but the pain had been lingering for years. Have you ever felt the weight of always being second best? Caitlin was determined to reverse the roles. Years of favoritism had created a wound that Caitlin carried silently. She tried to ignore it, forgive it, justify it. Maybe it was just her parents' way. Maybe Emma didn't realize the impact of her actions. But the truth was clear. The entire family worked to keep her small. At family events, Caitlin was left out, literally, at distant tables or forgotten in conversations. Emma, on the other hand, was the center of attention, with her parents recounting her achievements as if they were heroic deeds. Caitlin remembered a dinner where she tried to talk about a project she'd led at work, but her mother interrupted her to talk about Emma's new position. "They never listened to me," she thought, as she tried to fix her hair with a scarf. The betrayal of the haircut was more than a cruel act. It was confirmation that she would never be part of the family team. But now, with her anger boiling, Caitlin felt a new strength. "They think I'm weak," she reflected, "but I'll show them how wrong they are." Have you ever tried to prove yourself to someone who's never seen you? Caitlin was ready to make her family face the consequences. The toxic dynamic wasn't just between Caitlin and her parents. Emma was a central piece of the puzzle. Ever since they were children, Emma seemed to enjoy seeing Caitlin belittled. When Caitlin received a rare compliment, Emma would respond with scathing comments or shift the focus to herself. Her parents, complicit, never corrected her. Caitlin remembered a birthday when she received a beautiful dress from her aunt. Emma, jealous, accidentally spilled juice on the fabric, and her parents laughed, calling Caitlin clumsy. These memories cut deep as she prepared for the wedding. Her ruined hair was just another chapter in an old story. But now Caitlin saw it all clearly. Her family didn't love her the way they loved Emma, and this was no longer a weakness. It was her motivation. They treated me like dirt for too long, she thought, as she scribbled notes in her notebook. The plan with Mark was taking shape. Have you ever realized someone close to you wanted you down? Caitlin was ready to show that the game had changed. Emma always had a knack for turning Caitlin's moments into shadows. When Caitlin, at 12, won a poetry contest at school, Emma spread the word among her classmates that she had copied the text. The lie spread quickly, and Caitlin spent weeks being ridiculed. Her parents, instead of defending her, said, "Don't make a fuss, Caitlin. Emma is just joking." But it wasn't a joke, it was jealousy. Emma couldn't stand it when Caitlin received any praise. As a teenager, when Caitlin was asked to be a bridesmaid at a cousin's wedding, Emma convinced her family that Caitlin wasn't up to the task and took her place. Caitlin cried alone in her room while Emma shone at the event. These acts of sabotage continued into adulthood. When Caitlin landed an interview for a dream job, Emma, with access to her email, sent a disastrous message to the recruiter, making Caitlin look irresponsible. "Why do you always have to compete with me?" Caitlin asked once. Emma just smiled. Now with her hair cut, Caitlin knew Emma was behind it all. Have you ever faced someone who smiles while tearing you down? Caitlin was fed up. Emma's envy was like a shadow that followed Caitlin through every important moment. When Caitlin started dating as a teenager, Emma spread rumors about her, saying Caitlin was just an attention seeker. Her parents believed them, scolding Caitlin for showing off. At a family charity event, Caitlin organized everything herself, but Emma showed up at the last minute, took credit, and posed for the photos. Her parents applauded Emma, while Caitlin was forgotten. Every sabotage was calculated, designed to keep Caitlin in the background. Emma knew how to manipulate the narrative, painting Caitlin as vain or unstable, while she was the perfect daughter. The haircut on the eve of the wedding wasn't just her mother's idea. Caitlin knew Emma had planted the seed. "Don't you think Caitlin is overdoing it with that hair?" Emma probably whispered, knowing her mother would act. The betrayal stung, but it also made it clear Emma would never be her ally. Caitlin grabbed her phone and jotted down more details of the plan with Mark. "Have you ever noticed someone close to you sabotaging you behind your back?" Caitlin was ready to expose Emma. Emma's jealousy knew no bounds, and she used her charm to manipulate everyone around her. In college, Caitlin was selected for a prestigious exchange program. Excited, she shared the news with her family, but Emma, with a fake smile, said, "You? Really? I think they made the wrong choice." Days later, Caitlin discovered that Emma had convinced her parents not to help with the costs, claiming Caitlin wasn't ready. Caitlin lost the opportunity and watched Emma travel to a summer program abroad, paid for by her parents. Each of Caitlin's victories triggered Emma, who did everything she could to dim her shine. At work, when Caitlin was promoted, Emma spread the word among family friends that Caitlin only got the position because of favors. The lie hurt, but her parents believed it. Now with her wedding, Emma has stepped up her game. Caitlin overheard Emma tell her mother, "We can't let Caitlin outshine me on my day." The haircut was the answer. Enough of being her target, Caitlin thought as she texted Mark. "Have you ever had to deal with jealousy from someone close to you?" Caitlin was ready to turn the tables. Emma didn't just sabotage, she made a point of publicly humiliating Caitlin. At a family dinner, when Caitlin tried to share a business idea, Emma interrupted with a laugh. "You and your crazy ideas. Leave that to someone who understands." Everyone laughed, and Caitlin swallowed her embarrassment. Emma knew how to use words to belittle her, always with a playful tone that masked the malice. Her parents never noticed or pretended not to. When Caitlin began to gain prominence at work, Emma would show up at family social events with exaggerated stories about her own achievements, ensuring Caitlin remained marginalized. The haircut was the culmination of this campaign. Caitlin knew Emma had suggested the idea to her mother, perhaps with a casual comment, "Caitlin is very vain, don't you think?" The betrayal was clear now. Sitting in her room, Caitlin felt her anger turn to determination. "Emma thinks she knows me," she thought, "but she has no idea what I'm capable of." With Mark by her side, the plan took shape. Have you ever faced someone who humiliated you to feel superior? Caitlin was ready to show who the real winner was. Emma's sabotage was a pattern Caitlin was slow to recognize. Every moment Caitlin shone, Emma found a way to overshadow her. In high school, Caitlin was cast as a solo performer in the school choir. Emma, who was also in the choir, faked an anxiety attack on the day of the performance, forcing Caitlin to give up her seat. Her parents praised Emma for overcoming the crisis, while Caitlin remained backstage. Years later, as Caitlin began to build a solid career, Emma spread the word among acquaintances that Caitlin only got the job because of her looks. The lie hurt, but what was worse was hearing her mother repeat it at a dinner party. Now, on the eve of the wedding, the haircut was the final straw. Caitlin knew Emma was behind it, manipulating her mother to ensure she didn't have a chance to shine. "They want me out," Caitlin thought as she read a text from Mark. "I have what you need for the plan." Anger mixed with hope. Have you ever noticed someone doing everything they could to keep you small? Caitlin was ready to show Emma that the game had changed. When Emma announced her engagement to Jackson, Caitlin wanted to believe it would be a chance for the family to bond. But it soon became clear that Emma would use the event to reinforce her control. At the engagement dinner, Emma insisted that Caitlin wear a drab beige dress, while she shone in a glittering gown. "You don't want to upstage the bride, do you?" Emma said, her smile concealing venom. Caitlin agreed, wanting to avoid conflict, but felt the pitying looks from the guests. Her parents, as always, supported Emma. "Do what your sister wants, Caitlin. It's her day." At each pre-wedding event, Emma found ways to limit Caitlin, from forbidding her from wearing too flashy makeup to ordering her not to speak in the toasts. Caitlin tried to ignore it, but each restriction was a reminder that Emma saw her as a threat. Tensions mounted, and Caitlin felt anger bubble up. "She wants to erase me from her own wedding," she thought, as she put away an invitation Emma had forgotten to give her. "Have you ever been forced to diminish yourself to please someone else?" Caitlin knew this had to end. The wedding preparations intensified Emma's control. During the bridesmaid's dress fitting, Emma rejected all options that favored Caitlin, choosing a style that made her look dull. "You look great like this, Caitlin. You don't need more," Emma said, as the other bridesmaids chuckled. Caitlin swallowed the humiliation, but her mother's comment was worse. "Stop complaining, Caitlin. Emma knows best." At another event, a cake tasting, Emma accused Caitlin of trying to steal the spotlight simply by suggesting a flavor everyone liked. Her parents, as always, sided with Emma, telling Caitlin to behave. With each restriction, Caitlin felt the weight of being treated like a supporting character in her own family. She began to realize that the engagement wasn't just about the wedding, but about Emma ensuring Caitlin stayed in the shadows. "She thinks she can control me forever," Caitlin thought, as she texted Mark, who promised support. "Have you ever felt someone was trying to control you?" Caitlin was starting to plan her response. Emma wasn't content with simply controlling Caitlin's appearance. She wanted to dominate every detail of her appearance. At the wedding rehearsal, Emma insisted that Caitlin stand in the back of the bridesmaids' formation, so as not to distract. When Caitlin tried to suggest a song for the ceremony, Emma cut her off. "You don't understand weddings, Caitlin. Leave it to me." Her parents applauded Emma's leadership, while Caitlin felt the scorn. Each event was a new opportunity for Emma to humiliate her. At a pre-wedding party, Emma accidentally spilled wine on Caitlin's dress, laughing as she said, "Oops, you always were clumsy." The guests laughed, but Caitlin saw the glint of satisfaction in her sister's eyes. The message was clear. Emma would do anything to keep her small. Caitlin began to collect evidence, messages, photos, comments, knowing she would need it. "They think I'm weak," she thought as she talked to Mark about the plan. "Have you ever been humiliated by someone who was supposed to support you?" Caitlin was ready to change the narrative. Emma's obsession with controlling Caitlin became more evident as the wedding approached. During a meeting with the photographer, Emma insisted that Caitlin appear as little as possible in the official photos. "She's not that photogenic," Emma said in a deceptively sweet tone. Her parents agreed, and Caitlin felt her anger grow. At another point, Emma criticized the speech Caitlin prepared as a bridesmaid, rewriting it to be about herself. "You have no public speaking skills, Caitlin. I'll help you," she said with a condescending smile. Caitlin swallowed her indignation, but Emma's every word was like a knife. She began to realize that the engagement was an excuse for Emma to reinforce her superiority. The haircut, planned by Emma and executed by her mother, was the final blow. "She wants to erase me completely," Caitlin thought as she read a message from Mark. "I have something that will change the game." Have you ever felt someone try to erase you from an important moment? Caitlin was determined to show that she would no longer be a shadow. Emma turned the engagement into a stage for her own glory. and Caitlin was merely an obstacle to be removed. At an engagement party, Emma made a point of introducing Caitlin as "my little sister who loves attention," drawing laughter from the guests. Caitlin tried to laugh along, but the humiliation burned. Her parents, as always, supported Emma, praising her maturity while ignoring Caitlin's discomfort. Each event presented a new restriction. Emma decided what Caitlin could wear, say, or even where she could be. When Caitlin tried to help with the decorations, Emma brushed her off. "You'll ruin everything, as always." The remark echoed years of belittling. Caitlin realized the wedding wasn't just about Emma and Jackson. It was about Emma ensuring Caitlin had no room to shine. But while Emma was giving orders, Caitlin was exchanging messages with Mark, who promised a surprise that would rock the family. Enough of being the victim, Caitlin thought. Have you ever been forced to fade away so someone else could shine? Caitlin was ready to take over. At Emma's bridal shower, Caitlin was forced to wear a drab dress chosen by Emma to ensure she wouldn't draw attention. When she tried to help with the games, Emma interrupted her. "Let me handle it, Caitlin. You'd just be in the way." The guests laughed and Caitlin felt her face burn. Her mother, instead of defending her, said, "Don't make a scene, Caitlin. It's your sister's day." Later, Emma forgot to include Caitlin in a group photo with her friends, whispering to the others, "She always wants to be the center." The exclusion wasn't accidental. It was part of a plan to belittle her. Caitlin tried to maintain her composure, but each laugh from the guests felt like a knife. She heard an aunt comment, "Caitlin's acting strange today, isn't she?" Emma's narrative was working. Caitlin seemed unsteady, while Emma glowed like the perfect bride. But Caitlin kept every humiliation in her mind, fueling her anger. "They think I'm weak," she thought as she texted Mark. "Have you ever been left out of a moment that should have been shared?" Caitlin was beginning to plot her revenge. During a pre-wedding party, Emma took the humiliation to another level. Caitlin was assigned to serve drinks as if she were a staff member, while Emma posed for photos with the guests. When Caitlin tried to join in the conversation, Emma laughed out loud. "Caitlin, you don't understand these things. Go help in the kitchen." Her parents applauded Emma's organization, ignoring Caitlin's embarrassment. Later, Emma insisted that Caitlin wear an old dull necklace, saying, "You don't need fancy jewelry, it's not about you." Caitlin swallowed her anger, but felt the pitying glances from the guests. A cousin asked, "Are you okay, Caitlin? You look so dull." The question stung, but it also ignited something in Caitlin. She wasn't dull, she was being dulled. Each humiliation was a piece in the puzzle of Emma's campaign to keep her in the shadows. "They're going to regret treating me like this," Caitlin thought, as she texted Mark, who promised a surprise wedding. "Have you ever been treated like an invisible person at an important moment?" Caitlin was ready to change the script. At the wedding dinner rehearsal, Emma went even further. Caitlin prepared a maid of honor speech, but Emma rejected it, saying, "It's too long and kind of cheesy. I rewrote it for you." The new speech was all about Emma, with no mention of Caitlin. When Caitlin tried to protest, her mother cut her off. "Stop being selfish, Caitlin. It's Emma's moment." During the rehearsal, Emma positioned Caitlin in the far corner of the table, away from the main photos. The guests, influenced by Emma's comments, began to treat her with distance as if she were a problem. An uncle asked, "Are you okay, Caitlin? I heard you're a little unstable." Emma's lie was spreading, painting Caitlin as unbalanced. The humiliation was suffocating, but Caitlin held back the tears. She knew crying would only give Emma what she wanted. Instead, she jotted down every detail on her phone, sending it all to Mark. "They think they broke me," she thought. "Have you ever been defamed by someone who wanted to erase you?" Caitlin was ready to fight back. On another occasion, at a meeting with Jackson's family, Emma accused Caitlin of trying to flirt with one of the groom's cousins simply because Caitlin smiled during a conversation. The accusation, made loudly in front of everyone, prompted Caitlin's parents to scold her. "You always cause trouble, Caitlin. Get a grip." The humiliation was instant, and Caitlin saw Emma's satisfied smile. Later, Emma suggested that Caitlin not wear high heels to the wedding, claiming she would look too flashy. Her parents agreed, and Caitlin was forced to wear drab shoes that made her feel smaller. Each restriction was a blow to her confidence, but also fueled her anger. Caitlin began to realize that Emma would stop at nothing until she was completely erased from the event. "She wants me to be a shadow," Caitlin thought, as she read a text from Mark. All set for the big day. The humiliation was mounting, but Caitlin knew the tables were about to turn. Have you ever felt the weight of being constantly put down? Caitlin was ready to show her strength. The humiliations culminated in a family fundraiser organized before the wedding. Caitlin had worked for weeks on the organization, but Emma showed up at the last minute, took credit, and insisted Caitlin stay backstage. During the event, Emma gave a speech, thanking everyone except Caitlin. When Caitlin tried to speak to the guests, Emma pulled her aside. "Don't interfere, Caitlin, you'll only get in the way." Her parents, as always, supported Emma, saying, "Let your sister shine." Caitlin felt anger rise, but also clarity. Her family would never see her as an equal. Each humiliation was an attempt to erase her, to reinforce the narrative that she was inferior. But Caitlin was no longer the girl who accepted being diminished. While Emma posed for photos, Caitlin exchanged messages with Mark, finalizing the details of the plan. "They think they know me," she thought, a gleam in her eye. "Have you ever been pushed into the shadows by those who should value you?" Caitlin was ready to step out of the darkness and make everyone face the consequences. The night before the wedding should have been a night of rest, but for Caitlin, it was the scene of a cruel betrayal. She fell asleep early, exhausted from the day's stresses, unaware of what was to come. Around midnight, her mother entered the room with Emma at her side. Caitlin, sound asleep, didn't hear the light footsteps or the click of the scissors. Her mother, with cold precision, cut her long waves, leaving a jagged cut that looked like a deliberate attack. Emma, holding a flashlight, whispered, "This will keep her in her place." When they finished, they confiscated Caitlin's cell phone from the nightstand and took her accessories, hats, scarves, anything that could disguise the damage. Waking, Caitlin ran to the mirror. A scream caught in her throat. Her hair, which she loved, was destroyed. Her mother, upon seeing her, said coldly, "Don't overdo it, Caitlin. It's just hair." But it wasn't just hair, it was her confidence, her identity. "They wanted to humiliate me," Caitlin thought, tears welling in her eyes. Have you ever been betrayed while you were vulnerable? Caitlin felt anger rise, and with it, a plan. The shock of seeing her hair destroyed was like a punch to the gut. Caitlin ran her fingers through the short, uneven strands, unable to believe her own mother, with Emma's complicity, had done this. She confronted her mother, her voice trembling. "Why? How could you?" The response was an icy glare. "You always want attention, Caitlin. This is to make sure it's Emma's day." Emma in the background feigned concern, but Caitlin saw the glint of satisfaction in her eyes. The confiscated phone and the removed accessories were part of the plan, to isolate Caitlin, prevent her from asking for help or hiding the damage. She tried to fix her hair with her hands, but the mirror only showed the extent of the cruelty. Each snip was a message, "You are nothing." But as the pain consumed her, Caitlin felt something shift. Anger replaced the tears. "They think they destroyed me," she thought, as she searched for a tissue hidden deep in her bag. Have you ever been hurt by the very person who was supposed to protect you? Caitlin was beginning to plot her revenge. The betrayal of the haircut wasn't just an impulsive act. It was a calculated strategy. Caitlin recalled a conversation days earlier when Emma told her mother, "Caitlin is planning something for the wedding. She always wants to be the center of attention." Her mother, blinded by favoritism, believed it, and the haircut was their solution to control her. Without her cell phone, Caitlin couldn't immediately call for help, but she found a way to access her messages on an old tablet hidden in her room. She wrote to Mark, Jackson's brother, who already knew about the toxic family dynamic. "They cut my hair while I was sleeping. I need you." Mark responded immediately. "This is unacceptable. Let's turn this around." The humiliation burned, but it also ignited a spark in Caitlin. She looked in the mirror, touching her destroyed strands, and murmured, "You made a mistake." The betrayal had hurt her, but it had also awakened her. Have you ever felt the pain of such a profound betrayal? Caitlin knew the wedding would be the perfect stage for her answer. As the house prepared for the big day, Caitlin tried to process what had happened. Her hair, which she cared for so lovingly, was more than a vanity. It was a symbol of her strength, of her identity. Her mother and Emma knew this, and that was precisely why they chose to attack it. Her mother, seeing her fixing her hair with a scarf, said, "Don't make a fuss, Caitlin, you still look presentable." The word presentable cut like a knife. Emma, in turn, feigned surprise. "Wow, Caitlin, what happened? Are you okay?" But her sarcastic tone betrayed her satisfaction. Caitlin realized the plan was not only to humiliate her, but to ensure she felt powerless. Without accessories or a cell phone, they thought they had her cornered. But Caitlin wasn't as helpless as they thought. She found a small mirror and began planning how she would use what little she had. They think they've silenced me, she thought, a determined glint in her eyes. Have you ever been attacked so viciously? Caitlin was ready to show she wasn't a victim. The cruelty of the haircut was more than a physical act. It was an attempt to erase Caitlin from the wedding. She remembered how weeks earlier, Emma had looked at her hair with disdain. You make a big deal out of it, Caitlin. It's just hair. Now, Caitlin understood that Emma saw her hair as a threat, something that could steal the spotlight on the big day. Her mother, manipulated by her favorite daughter, carried out the plan without hesitation. Caitlin tried to fix her hair with clips, but the damage was too great. Every glance in the mirror was a reminder of the betrayal. But as the house buzzed with preparations, Caitlin felt her anger transform into strength. She managed to retrieve her cell phone, hidden by her mother in a drawer, and saw the messages from Mark. I have everything you need for the plan. The family's betrayal was the lowest blow, but also the trigger. Caitlin looked in the mirror one last time and promised, you will regret this. Have you ever been betrayed by the one who was supposed to love you? Caitlin was ready to bring justice. The wedding hall was decorated with flowers and lights, but for Caitlin it was a battlefield. From the moment she arrived, guests stared at her with looks of pity or morbid curiosity. Emma had spread the story that Caitlin, in a spurt, had cut her own hair the night before. She's going through a rough time, Emma said with a falsely concerned tone as the guests nodded. Caitlin tried to explain the truth to a cousin, but her mother pulled her aside. Stop making up stories, Caitlin. You're ruining your sister's day. The lie was so well orchestrated that even those close to her believed it. Caitlin felt the weight of the stares, the whispers. Poor thing, she's always been unstable. She held back tears, knowing that crying would only reinforce the narrative. As she fixed the scarf covering her ruined hair, she received a text from Mark. It's almost time. The humiliation was suffocating, but Caitlin felt a spark of hope. They think they silenced me, he thought. Have you ever been vilified by the very people who were supposed to protect you? Caitlin was ready to turn the tables. During the ceremony, Caitlin was placed in the far corner, almost invisible among the bridesmaids. Emma, radiant in her dress, received all the compliments while Caitlin heard whispers about her breakdown. An aunt approached and asked quietly, Are you okay, Caitlin? I heard you did something to your hair. The question, filled with pity, was further proof of the success of Emma's lie. Caitlin tried to answer, but Emma interrupted her with a smile. She just needs rest, Auntie. Let's focus on the wedding. The parents nearby nodded, as if Caitlin were a troubled child. The humiliation burned, but Caitlin held her head high. She knew the truth was on her side. As Emma walked down the aisle, Caitlin exchanged texts with Mark, who was backstage, preparing something big. They'll see who I am, Caitlin thought, adjusting her scarf. The family's lie was suffocating her, but she wouldn't be the victim for long. Have you ever been judged for a lie you couldn't deny? Caitlin was ready to expose it all. At the reception, Emma's narrative gained even more traction. Guests avoided Caitlin, some whispering as she passed. A family friend asked, Caitlin, why did you do that to your hair? Wasn't it easier to wait until the wedding was over? The question, innocent but laced with lies, made Caitlin clench her fists. She tried to explain, but her mother interrupted. Enough, Caitlin, don't turn Emma's day into your drama. Emma in the background smiled, knowing her story was working. Caitlin felt her anger rise, but also her determination. She wasn't unstable, she was a survivor. As the guests toasted Emma, Caitlin received another message from Mark. Everything is ready, just wait for the moment. The public humiliation was unbearable, but Caitlin knew the tide was about to turn. They think they destroyed me with this lie, she thought, looking at Emma, who was posing for photos. Have you ever been the victim of a cruel narrative? Caitlin was ready to rewrite history. As the party continued, Caitlin realized how deeply the lie had taken root. Even Jackson's friends, who barely knew her, treated her warily, as if she were fragile. Emma had done an impeccable job, spinning the story of her meltdown with convincing detail. She always had these moments, Emma told a group of guests with a theatrical sigh. Her parents reinforced this, telling exaggerated stories about Caitlin's unstable behavior in the past. Each word was a blow, but Caitlin refused to break down. She found a quiet corner and checked her phone, seeing Mark's messages. The surprise is ready. You're going to shine. The humiliation was a burden, but also fuel. Caitlin looked out over the crowd, seeing Emma in the center, smiling as if untouchable. They think they know me, Caitlin thought, a determined glint in her eyes. Have you ever been defamed to seem less than you are? Caitlin was ready to show the truth. The lie about Caitlin's hair was more than gossip. It was a weapon to isolate her. During dinner, Emma made a point of calling Caitlin out, saying loudly, "Caitlin, you're so quiet today. Is everything okay?" Her tone was concerned, but Emma's smile betrayed the mischief. The guests laughed, thinking it was a joke, while Caitlin felt her face heat up. Her mother added, "She just needs to behave today." The humiliation was complete, but Caitlin didn't give in. She knew Mark was working behind the scenes, preparing something that would change everything. While Emma glowed, Caitlin adjusted her hairscarf, hiding the damage, but not her determination. "They think they broke me," she thought, as she read Mark's last message. Not long now. The family's lie had cornered her, but Caitlin was ready to take center stage. Have you ever been publicly humiliated by a lie? Caitlin was about to turn pain into victory. The wedding ceremony was a spectacle carefully orchestrated by Emma, and Caitlin was merely a background figure. Positioned in the far corner among the bridesmaids, she barely appeared in the photos. When she tried to approach for a greeting, Emma pushed her away with a fake smile. "Caitlin, stay back there, okay? We don't want any trouble." Her parents, always at Emma's side, reinforced, "Obey your sister, Caitlin. Don't complicate things." The guests, already poisoned by the lie of the breakdown, eyed her warily as if fearing a scene. Caitlin felt the weight of isolation, as if she were an outsider in her own family. During the photo shoot, the photographer, following Emma's orders, asked Caitlin to remove herself from several frames. "Just for balance, honey." The humiliation was subtle but cutting. While Emma shone in the center, Caitlin exchanged messages with Mark, who was backstage. "All set, just wait for the signal." "They think I'm nobody," Caitlin thought, adjusting her hairscarf. "Have you ever been pushed to the margins of a moment you were meant to share?" Caitlin was ready to take center stage. At the reception, Caitlin's isolation became even more evident. She was seated at a table in the corner of the room, away from the main family and the closest guests. A radiant Emma wandered among the tables, receiving compliments, while Caitlin was ignored. When she tried to stand up to greet someone, her mother scolded her. "Stay where you are, Caitlin. We don't need any distractions." The guests, swayed by Emma's narrative, kept their distance, some even avoiding eye contact. A cousin approached, but only to say, "You're so quiet today, Caitlin. Are you okay?" The question, filled with pity, was more of a stab. Caitlin smiled, hiding her anger, and replied, "I'm fine." But inside she seethed. She looked at Emma, who was posing for photos with a triumphant smile, and thought, "You think you've erased me, but you're wrong." Mark texted, "Not long now." The exclusion was suffocating her, but Caitlin knew her time was coming. "Have you ever been treated like an outsider in your own story?" Caitlin was ready to change the game. During dinner, Caitlin tried to integrate, but every attempt was blocked. When she approached a conversation, Emma cut her off with a sarcastic comment. "Caitlin, why don't you help serve the drinks? You're good at it." The guests laughed, and her parents nodded, as if it were natural. Caitlin swallowed the humiliation, but felt her anger rise. She was excluded from family photos, with Emma telling the photographer, "Let's do some with just the main ones." Caitlin, left out, heard the whispers, "She looks so out of place." Emma's narrative had made Caitlin a secondary figure, almost invisible. But Caitlin wasn't as alone as they thought. Mark, backstage, sent a message. "The plan is ready. You're going to shine." While Emma received applause for her beauty and grace, Caitlin adjusted her scarf, hiding her ruined hair but not her determination. "They think they erased me," she thought, a gleam in her eye. "Have you ever been left out of a moment that was supposed to be yours?" Caitlin was ready to show she wasn't invisible. Caitlin's exclusion wasn't just physical, it was emotional. During the speeches, Emma and her parents spoke at length about their family, but Caitlin was barely mentioned. When an uncle asked why she was so quiet, Emma replied with a sigh, "She's going through a hard time, you know." The breakdown lie continued to spread, and Caitlin felt the judgmental stares. She tried to speak to a family friend, but her mother interrupted. "Caitlin, go see if they need help in the kitchen." The loud order made the guests laugh, as if it were a joke, but for Caitlin, it was yet another attempt to belittle her. She returned to her table, isolated, but her mind was elsewhere. Mark sent another message. "It's time. Let's do this." The exclusion had hurt her, but it had also strengthened her. "They think I'm a nuisance," Caitlin thought, looking at Emma, who was glowing in the center of the room. "Have you ever been treated like you didn't matter?" Caitlin was ready to prove otherwise. As the party continued, Caitlin realized how hard her family had worked to erase her. She wasn't in the main photos, She wasn't invited to the toasts, and even the waiters seemed to ignore her, following Emma's subtle orders. A cousin of Jackson's asked, "Caitlin, why are you so far away? Aren't you your sister?" The question was innocent, but it stung. Caitlin smiled, hiding her anger, and said, "I'm just leaving Emma space." But inside, she seethed. Emma had gotten what she wanted. Caitlin was a shadow at the wedding, but Mark, behind the scenes, was finalizing the preparations for the turnaround. "They're going to regret ignoring me," Caitlin thought, as she read Mark's last message. "All set. Let's turn this around." The exclusion was unbearable, but Caitlin knew her time was coming. She adjusted her scarf, straightened her shoulders, and prepared for the moment that would change everything. Have you ever been pushed out of the spotlight? Caitlin was ready to take the stage. The room was filled with laughter and toasts, but for Caitlin, her father's speech was like a knife to the heart. He stood before the guests with a proud smile, praising Emma as the daughter who always surprises us, smart, strong, the star of the family. When he mentioned Caitlin, his tone changed. And Caitlin, well, she has her charm, doesn't she? The guests' laughter cut deep as if she were a joke. Sitting at her secluded table, Caitlin felt the weight of a lifetime of disdain. Every word her father said confirmed what she had always known. To the family, she was secondary, an accessory in Emma's story. The lie about the haircut, the years of humiliation, the exclusions, it all crystallized in that moment. She looked at her father, then at Emma, who was smiling contentedly, and thought, enough. The pain turned to cold determination. Caitlin picked up her phone and saw the message from Mark. "It's time." Have you ever felt that moment when you realized you no longer needed anyone's approval? Caitlin was ready to take action. As the applause for her father's speech echoed, Caitlin felt something break inside her. It wasn't sadness anymore, it was clarity. Years of trying to prove herself, seeking praise, recognition, had been in vain. Her father, who was supposed to protect her, had reduced her to a footnote in front of everyone. Emma, beside him, smiled, knowing her narrative of Caitlin the unstable had worked. Her mother, sitting nearby, didn't even glance at Caitlin, as if she didn't exist. The humiliation was complete, but also liberating. Caitlin realized she owed no loyalty to a family that treated her as inferior. She wiped away a furtive tear and murmured, "You lost me today." On his phone, Mark wrote, "The plan is ready. We'll make them regret it." The anger that burned in Caitlin now had a purpose. She was no longer the girl who begged for acceptance. "They think they know me," she thought, adjusting the scarf in her hair. "Have you ever reached the point where you've decided to stop bending?" Caitlin was ready to turn the tables. The pain of her father's speech wasn't new, but it was the trigger. Caitlin remembered all the times she'd tried to win their love, the perfect grades in school, the promotion at work, the efforts to be a good sister. Nothing was enough. Her father always praised Emma, while Caitlin received crumbs of attention, often tinged with condescension. Now, in front of hundreds of guests, he'd reduced her to a caricature. The whispers continued. Poor Caitlin, always so dramatic. The lie of the breakdown, orchestrated by Emma, had sealed her image, but Caitlin no longer felt shame. She felt power. She looked at the head table, where Emma shone, and thought, "You've won every battle so far, but not the war." Mark sent another message. "Everything is in place, just wait for my signal." The public humiliation had pushed her to the limit, but it had also freed her. Have you ever felt the freedom to let go of someone who hurts you? Caitlin was ready to show her true strength. As the guests toasted, Caitlin fell silent, processing the moment. Her father's speech wasn't just a humiliation, it was a confession of how her family viewed her. Emma, with her triumphant smile, seemed untouchable, but Caitlin knew her mask was about to slip. Years of belittling, sabotaging, and exclusion, it all culminated that night. Caitlin realized that trying to change her family was futile. They would never value her, but that didn't mean she had to accept defeat. She glanced at her phone where Mark had sent her a short video. This will change everything. Anger mingled with hope. Caitlin was no longer the victim crying silently. She was a woman with a plan. They think they destroyed me, she thought, a gleam in her eye. Her family's betrayal had brought her to rock bottom, but now she was rising. Have you ever reached the point where you decided to fight for yourself? Caitlin was ready to seek justice. Caitlin's emotional trigger came with a painful clarity. She didn't need her family to be whole. Her father's speech, Emma's lies, her mother's indifference, all of it was proof that she had never belonged in that circle. As the guests danced, Caitlin remained at her table, but her mind was elsewhere. She no longer felt like explaining or defending herself. The pain had transformed her. Mark, her backstage ally, sent one final message. "It's time to show who you are." Caitlin looked at Emma, laughing in the center of the room, and thought, "You think you've won, but the game is just beginning." The humiliation of the speech was the final nail in the coffin of her loyalty to her family. Now, Caitlin was free to act. She adjusted her scarf, straightened her shoulders, and prepared for the moment that would change everything. Have you ever felt the moment when you decided it was time to put yourself first? Caitlin was ready to shine. Caitlin felt the weight of years of humiliation dissolve into a powerful clarity. Her father's speech, Emma's exclusion, the haircut, it had all pushed her to the limit, but it had also freed her. She no longer needed the approval of a family that had never valued her. As the guests danced, Caitlin exchanged messages with Mark, who was backstage, finalizing the plan. He had obtained recordings of Emma discussing the haircut, laughing as he planned with her mother. This will keep Caitlin in her place. Mark also had messages of Emma manipulating her parents into excluding her from photos and speeches. Caitlin looked out at the ballroom, watching Emma pose as the perfect bride, and thought, "You think you've won, but you don't know what's coming." She adjusted the scarf in her hair, straightened her shoulders, and felt a new strength. "No more hiding," she murmured. The revenge she and Mark planned would be clever, public, and unforgettable. Have you ever felt the moment you decided to stop bowing? Caitlin was ready to shine. As the party continued, Caitlin prepared for the big moment. Mark, backstage, had connected his cell phone to the ballroom sound system, ready to broadcast the recordings. Caitlin knew the plan was risky, but necessary. She didn't just want to humiliate Emma. She wanted to show everyone the truth about her family. Mark sent a final message. "When you're ready, just say so." Caitlin looked at Emma, who was laughing with the guests, and felt her anger transform into power. Years of being belittled, excluded, and betrayed had prepared her for this moment. She was no longer the girl begging for acceptance. She was a woman ready to reclaim her story. "They think they destroyed me," she thought as she walked slowly toward the stage. Revenge wouldn't just be about exposing Emma. It would be about showing that Caitlin was stronger than anyone imagined. Have you decided it's time to show your true strength? Caitlin was just steps away from changing everything. Caitlin and Mark's plan was simple but devastating. During the speeches, Caitlin would take the microphone, something Emma never expected. She would reveal the truth, supported by Mark's recordings, which included Emma laughing as she planned the haircut and her parents agreeing to the sabotage. Caitlin also had a surprise, a projection of photos and messages that revealed years of Emma's manipulation. They'll see who she really is, Caitlin thought, as Mark adjusted the projector backstage. Her family had underestimated her, believing she would accept the humiliation in silence. But Caitlin was tired of being the victim. She looked at her father, who was toasting Emma, and thought, "You called me special in your own way, but now I'm going to show him what that means." The determination in her eyes was undeniable. Have you ever felt the power of taking control after years of being diminished? Caitlin was ready to silence the entire room. As the music played, Caitlin approached the stage, her heart pounding. Mark, backstage, gave the signal. Now, Caitlin took the microphone, ignoring Emma's surprised look. "I want to say a few words," she began, her voice firm. The room fell silent. She spoke of the years of neglect, the sabotage, and then, with a gesture, Mark played the recordings. Emma's voice echoed, laughing as she said, "Cutting her hair will teach her a lesson." The guests gasped and Emma's face paled. Caitlin continued, revealing how her family had ostracized and vilified her. "I'm not unstable," she said, looking at her parents. "You tried to erase me, but I'm here." The truth shocked the room, and Emma, for the first time, seemed small. Caitlin finished with a smile. "This is my moment. Have you ever stood up to those who tried to destroy you?" Caitlin had turned the tables. Caitlin's revenge was more than exposure. It was liberation. When the taping ended, the guests looked at Emma and her parents with shock and disapproval. Caitlin left the stage, her head held high, as Emma stammered and tried to explain herself. Her parents, speechless, faced the judgmental stares. Caitlin didn't need anything more from them. She had shown her strength, her truth. Later, Mark found her and said, "You were amazing." Caitlin smiled, feeling light for the first time in years. Her family tried to shut her out, but she shone brighter. Moral of the story: never underestimate someone you tried to destroy. Their strength may be your greatest surprise. Caitlin learned that her worth didn't depend on the approval of others, but on her own courage. What did you think of Caitlin's story? Leave a comment, like the video, and subscribe to the channel for more stories of overcoming adversity and justice. Have you ever faced betrayal and bounced back? Tell us. See you in the next video.